So the Apple event is finally confirmed. We know that California streaming is coming on September the 14th. So let's answer your questions about that. I'm iCave Dave and I simplify Apple so that everything just works for you, and let's get straight into it today. So a couple of little tidbits of news before we get into the questions, but the 8th generation iPad shipping times have slipped to 3 to 6 weeks already, which suggests that that's going to actually be one of the first things to be refreshed. So it looks like my thoughts are out the window on what was coming at which event, but there's a big thing coming later today from John Prosser at 10:15 AM Central Time, probably worth watching Front Page Tech if you're available to do so, because I think John has something pretty big coming. But that out of the way, I'm not going to be predicting in this video which products are going to be coming at which event, because I think everyone's going to be covering that, and we will do our usual roundup of what all the sites are predicting later in the week. But we've also got our hash flag here. The hash flag, if you're not aware, is that little thing that comes up at the end of a hashtag on Twitter where different companies can put in custom graphics that will come up every time someone uses the hashtag. It costs quite a lot of money. I think it costs like $1 million plus every time a company wants to install one. But for Apple, that's like no money at all, and this one looks like it's staying around for a while. Now, the one for WWDC only disappeared on Monday, so it's been active. So if you put in WWDC 21 or 2021, whichever one it was, up until Monday, you would still get the special logo at the end of it. Now, that one disappeared on Monday, the new one arrived yesterday, and this one is set to stay until December. So it doesn't look like Apple is going to have a new hash flag for each event, which is interesting. But I suppose the other way to interpret that is, what if they're not doing multiple events? What if actually Apple is doing one big event like they used to when they were doing live events, but streaming it? What if it's going to be like a 2-hour plus event, and everything's coming at this event? It would certainly throw everyone off the scent a little bit. But as I say, this one is staying around until December, so they're either going to keep using the same hash flag, the same gradient image of the apple for all of these events, or we're getting one big event, and it could go either way. But let's get into your questions, because that's going to be the more interesting stuff. So Josh asks, iCave answers, when the new Macs come out, will you get the MacBook Air or the MacBook Pro, and what size? Now, I'm personally not a particularly big MacBook user. I know it sounds weird because I run an Apple channel and I talk about Macs all the time, but I'm a much bigger fan of desktops. So I'm really looking forward to the new Mac Mini with M1X if and when that arrives. We don't actually have a timetable on that. I'm hoping that it's going to be this autumn as well, but we don't actually know on that one. However, that's what I'm looking forward to the most, is Mac Mini with M1X. I could actually use a laptop, so if I do get one, it's probably going to be an Air, because I don't need to have all the power on the go, and the M1 has got plenty of power as it is. If Apple was to do a reduced cost version of the M1 Air, not the M2 one, but the M1 Air, when the M2 comes out, I would probably go for the M1, because that's absolutely enough for what I would need. It's basically for doing scripts, it's basically for doing a bit of office type stuff, nothing really beyond that. Otherwise, if I was going to be going for pure laptop and I was going to kind of dock it at the desk, M1X MacBook Pro, but I would probably go for the 14-inch. I'm not that bothered about a huge screen, because I'm always going to plug it into a big screen when I want to use it big, and I want it to be portable when I want to move it around. Dante Burritar asks, iCave answers, any guesses on the screen resolution of the 14-inch MacBook Pro? If it's a lower resolution than the 16-inch, will that mean more frames per second in games using the same SoC? And that's a really good question. I do think it will be lower resolution than the 16-inch. That just makes sense, because otherwise you're basically just packing more pixels into a smaller space, which basically means that your PPI, your pixels per inch, goes up. So I think that it might feature the old 15-inch MacBook Pro's resolution of 2880 by 1800. The new 16-inch, I think, is 3068 by 1920, something like that. But it's just over 3000 by 1920. And I think that's a kind of sweet spot. So it will be a little bit higher resolution, a little bit more pixel dense than the 15 was, because you're packing it into that smaller display size. But I think that's probably where they'll go for. Now, in terms of more frames per second in games, it's not going to be a massive difference. Although we say that, it's actually probably nearly a megapixel different in size. So it's actually about 700,000 pixels different in size, which is mind-blowing how much that small change can actually make in terms of the pixels across the whole screen, but it's still not a huge difference. So I wouldn't expect any kind of really noticeable difference in terms of frames per second, but yeah, I guess the SoC isn't going to be working quite as hard to drive that display. John Malkin asks, iCave Answers, what are your predictions on colours for iPhone, Watch and MacBook Pros? Now, the only one we've actually had real leaks on, I suppose actually a couple of them, the iPhones, we've seen what looks like prototypes for like a coppery coloured iPhone. It almost looks more kind of browny bronze, I guess. It's quite muted, it's quite a kind of matte colour. It's kind of almost metallic wood. I know that's a weird concept, but that's what we've seen. But that would be looking at an iPhone Pro model, so that's a possibility. And then I think we would still get our black, our silver, and our gold. For the Apple Watch, we've heard that there's a green, but it looks like a kind of minty green, kind of light like the iPad Air green, if that makes sense. So very kind of pale mint kind of green. And then in terms of the MacBook Pros, we haven't really heard very much. I would love to see a matte black. I would love to see some more bold colours maybe come into the MacBook Pros rather than just the muted tones. But if you made your MacBook Pros match my iPhone Pros, I'd be a very happy guy. John Malkin asks, iCave Answers, MacBook Augmented Reality for FaceTime. I'm not quite sure what this question means. I have a feeling it's more about the event invite where you've got that kind of look through of the Apple logo, the augmented reality kind of Easter egg that's on the phones. If you click onto the event invite, it does look pretty cool, and it's weird because you can kind of place this Apple in your scene and then you can go through it with your phone and into this kind of vista. Now, it's interesting to note that the event invite, and I think this is probably what a lot of you have come here to see today, and when you go through that Apple logo, it looks like we're going into Monterey Bay, but we've already got questions coming up about the invite, so hold on for that. The thing is, I don't see them bringing AR to the MacBooks in terms of FaceTime unless they're putting Face ID cameras in, because that's when you get your true depth, which means that you can kind of track the face and put stuff around it. Don't think they're going to be doing that, but I could be wrong. Nobody really knows what's going on. Evan Rodgers asks, iCave Answers, how long will the September event be? For comparison, the WWDC keynote was a little under 2 hours, but all the previous events in the past year have been around an hour long. And as I mentioned earlier in this video, it could be a longer one because, as I say, that hash flag is set to last until the end of December, and I wonder if they're just setting up one hash flag that's going to cover all of the events, or is it going to be one hash flag that covers the event that happens between now and December? Maybe we're just going to get that one big event. Maybe there's going to be some staggered products within the time frame, so they'll come out and say your Apple Watch, your iPhones all go on sale this Friday, the new iPads go on sale this Friday too, and ship next week. All of that stuff comes kind of next week. Here's your new AirPods, or maybe the AirPods come at a press release later down the line. We don't know. And here's the MacBooks. They go on sale in 2 weeks' time and will ship a week after that. You know, so that there is a little bit of kind of spread for the press stuff. Maybe there's a software event down the line. Maybe there's some other stuff. And Lars Anderson asks, what are the hidden messages in the invitation this time? So it's difficult to know because it's always one of these things where you can kind of look back in retrospect and see what's going on, but it's very difficult to see up front. There is a twilight scene, which suggests that the iPhone cameras will work better in low light, which makes a lot of sense, and potentially that astrophotography mode, because I think we can see a few stars in the background. Obviously, all of this is quite speculative. It looks like the scene is set in Monterey Bay, which suggests Macs, because Monterey, macOS Monterey, you know, that's a possibility. There is definitely an AR element to it, but I don't think that's specific. I think that's just the format of what they do now for these event invites, is let people play with the AR stuff to just show what people can do, and I think as much as anything that's to inspire developers to do more with AR, because right now it's very much an underused technology. Beyond that, there's not a huge amount of stuff in there. I feel like, is it a Dawn? Is it like a new Dawn type thing? California streaming. There's been some suggestion, we've spoken in the past that Final Cut Pro might get streaming functionality in an OBS style. California streaming? Maybe. Or is it just to say, we're doing a big old streaming event? Or are they actually live streaming? Maybe they're actually going to be on stage for this event and live stream it out, so it's going to have pre-recorded portions and not have the usual format that we've got used to of a fully pre-recorded event. I don't know. That's the only thing, because playing a video that you've already recorded is not really streaming. Is this going to be an on-stage event that is kind of a hybrid with a lot of pre-recorded segments and Tim presenting it live, or the other presenters live on stage, even though there's no actual audience in place? It's very hard to know. It's very difficult to know, but it's going to be an exciting event either way. There is going to be a load of stuff going on live around it. There's going to be all sorts of YouTubers doing pre-shows, post-shows. We'll do our live post-show as usual, and then I'll get you out a video on the following day. But regardless, it's going to be a good time. The whole point of these events is it kind of brings the community together, gives us something to talk about, and finally, the drought is over. We know we've got stuff on the way. I'm excited for the new AirPods. Do want to pick those up. I'm excited for the new Macs, obviously, because that's all I've been talking about for the last year. So hold on to your hats, guys. It's going to be a good ride. Subscribe if you haven't already, because I feel like that's just the right thing to do, you know? And it's always good to be on the right side of history. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll see you in the next one.